Okay, good morning. My name's Justin Noxon, this is Andrew Jenner, we're from Noxon Architecture, and this is Shoreham House. Shoreham House sits on the traditional lands of the Bunurong, and it's in the little coastal hamlet of Shoreham, just adjacent to the Western Port Bay coastline there. It's a 2,000 square metre site, and when we came to the project, there's a little mid-century dwelling, very rustic, very elemental and basic. But the key thing, probably not a COLORBOND issue or award issue, but the thing about the project, the nature of the project, is the client was Danish heritage, and they were very interested in that Hugo sort of experience, family home, holiday home, and it was really about creating an environment where the family would come together quietly and be good living. So the original dwelling has this very interesting rustic bluestone base. The client's preferred sort of space is this elevated deck looking out through the tree canopy in that sort of classic coastal typology, all of the houses elevated on that, living up on their upper level. And the spaces had these very lovely little canopy connections, even though they were small and modest. So the site's bound by a track that people walk to the beach around here, and there's a floodplain on the lower portion of the site, which means this whole sort of lower portion is quite boggy and prone to the creek flooding. And the other element is the overlooking from all of these houses, which before the client took the site, they used that to walk their dogs, and they had passive view over the site. So the client was very concerned that we didn't sort of create a great big barrier to the neighbours. So we took this strategy. This is the original. They were expecting us to demolish the original little cottage. We proposed to keep it, which is this element. And we basically, from that balcony area, which is elevated up in the treetops, we just sort of extruded it out into the treetops out. And that allowed us to create permeability through the site underneath, but also the orientation, it avoids all these surrounding trees, and the predominant aspect is this sort of easterly towards the coast down here. That's the original dwelling. So the original dwelling is here. That on the ground level is sort of utilitarian support spaces, laundries and so forth. This is the glazed link that separates the two elements, and then this is the new wing here, which as you move up the stair, is through this glazed link, bedrooms and so forth, kids' bedrooms in this very modest, small existing portion, and then as you move then through into more open plan, casual, contemporary living, and the further you move through, it's out into a canopy and it becomes more and more open. So you see it here sitting in the landscape. We took an obvious reference from the little swamp gums there with the V supports, but also the sense that this is a bell-rated site and that it's anchored back up with the original cottage, and we spring in and it's enveloped in COLORBOND on underneath, around the walls and on the top, and punctuated with these opening timber screens. And that's about that permeability through the site. That's living up on that upper level amongst the tree canopy and allowing that sort of really permeable feel through the site. The more you get down into the upper end of the pavilion, just opens, it becomes part of the tree canopy. This is the protective western side, which is more to the public side, but also the western sun. So we really have this COLORBOND element underneath, around and over the top, and that is deliberately chosen in its sort of rhythm to match in with the timber battens, which are openable screens, operable screens to control the light and privacy from the road, all on this sort of galvanised steel sort of frame. So that's the glazed link element between the original rustic cottage, which we renovated, and then the new wing. And you can see the elevations, and we've kept this sort of datum going, so there's an original datum between materiality on the original, and we've stepped it down the side and kept that going, COLORBOND with this timber battens at the base. The original cottage, I won't dwell on this too much for you guys because it's a little different, but this is an essay really in bluestone and very simple tonal things. The original V panelling, very elementary, back to that Hugo thing of keeping it simple and singular and cohesive through those spaces. So that's got a flavour, as it were, that's part of that cottage. But when you move into the new wing, that's the entrance area, but on the outside we've left the cottage into the new wing. That's got a similar singularity, and that's a timber interior, but this is all steel framed, and that's the link taking you up. That's the original sort of bluestone wall, which we had to rebuild and so forth. So this is the new pavilion here on the steel supports. There's a skylight linking element, which we'll see in a minute here, which comes through here, and that just forms the spine of the building, which is this element here, and then it just feeds you through basically to the tree canopy. Punctuated again by day beds and little elements that the family, the two children, it's big enough to have a party on that day bed. So, and then all the spaces are very closely, casually connected, but that's just the calm of the canopy, the trees, the birds, the breezes. That's looking back down that spine to the original cottage up at the back. And keeping it very singular, this is a window in the kitchen area and allows passive surveillance over the sort of pool for the young children, but that singularity, that calmness, that elemental nature goes throughout main bedrooms. That sense that the outer shell, like the bark of a tree, is a protective for the Val rating, that's the COLORBOND element, top, sides and bottom. But you can see the sort of, I guess, the connection in rhythm between the COLORBOND profile and the timber screens. And in the same way that that's one sort of singular element, that calmness, the inside is a different singular element, which is the tree sort of reference within timber. Whereas the original cottage has all these battens, so we use different timber. But here we just kept the original operable screens, very, very simple. Not so interesting for COLORBOND, I guess. So Andrew, just share some construction things with you.
Yeah, so what appears in final outcome is quite simple, was complex in its execution, so really had to be a steel frame to manage the connection to the old cantilevers and really that open permeability. We probably couldn't have done it in timber or masonry and have that same open feel. And then, so from our model to the really coordinated shop drawings, making sure that a lot of this structure is on display so that the fabricators and our design intent got carried across to the final. This is the steel frame as it was installed, so it's a double cantilever with resting on those V columns, and then it's tensile tied back. And then because there's so much glass and so much open on the west, there's some truss walls on the east, there's some truss walls on the west, and then there's some portal columns. And some bluestone, we retained it all and we had to repair, again, inserting some steel to support that internally. And then the stair was important that it didn't touch too many places in the glass link, so there's the bluestone on one side and then you on the other. And then that floating steel structure basically only touches in at the landings. And then the roof is some conventional truss framing, but we worked hard with the carpenters and contractors to make sure it had that single uniform interior finish. And that's our Shoreham House. Thank you.